There was a time when my days felt like a race I never signed up for. The alarm would ring, and I'd dive straight into the noise. Emails, messages, errands, deadlines. Every minute had to mean something, or so I thought. I was busy from sunrise to sunset, but somehow I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. One evening, after another long day, I sat down, phone in hand, scrolling without purpose. The house was quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in a long while, I asked myself, why? Why am I rushing? Why am I chasing more when I don't even know what enough feels like anymore? That simple question changed everything. I started slowing down, one small moment at a time. I took walks without my phone, listened to the sound of my own breath, watched the sunlight move across the kitchen floor. The world didn't stop, but I did. And in that stillness, I found clarity. Sometimes we don't need to do more. We just need to be. Because peace doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from remembering why we do anything at all.
A few years ago, my life looked perfect on paper. I had the job I once dreamed about, the house I'd worked so hard for, and a calendar so full it made me feel important. Every day was a blur of meetings, deadlines, and phone calls. I told myself I was building a future, success, stability, recognition. But even when I hit the milestones I'd been chasing for years, there was this quiet emptiness I couldn't explain. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was more like a soft whisper underneath all the noise. Is this it? One morning, long before the world woke up, I sat by the window with a cup of coffee and watched the sky slowly turn from gray to gold. The house was silent. No emails, no phone buzzing, no rush. Just light, stillness, and the sound of my own breath. For the first time in a long while, I felt present. And in that simple, quiet moment, I realized something that shook me. I had built a busy life, not a meaningful one. All those years, I had been sprinting toward a finish line that kept moving. I thought happiness was something waiting for me at the top of the ladder, after I worked harder, earned more, achieved more. But success, as I learned, doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it just brings more noise. So I started small. I began saying no to things that drained me, the unnecessary meetings, the endless social events, the constant need to prove my worth. I took evening walks instead of answering one more email. I sat with my wife on the porch without checking the time. I started cooking again, slow, simple meals that filled the kitchen with warmth. The more I slowed down, the more I noticed what I'd been missing. The laughter that comes when you're not rushing out the door, the way sunlight dances across the table in the late afternoon, the quiet joy of doing one thing fully, not perfectly, just fully. It wasn't about quitting everything or escaping life. It was about being awake in the one I already had. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to outrun yourself, when you realize the things you've been chasing, success, approval, achievement, were never meant to fill your heart. What fills it is connection, presence, simplicity. I'm not saying I have it all figured out. I still slip back into old habits, still get caught up in the rush sometimes, but now I know how to return to stillness, to breathe, to listen, to remember what truly matters. If you're reading this and you feel that same quiet emptiness, that sense that life is full but you are not, maybe it's time to pause. Sit down with a cup of coffee, watch the sunrise. Let yourself be still long enough to hear what your heart's been trying to tell you. Because the truth is, Meaning doesn't come from doing more. It comes from noticing more, from living slower, from choosing moment by moment to build not just a busy life, but a beautiful one. It took me years to realize how much I was missing by moving too fast. Every day used to feel like a blur. Emails, traffic, grocery runs, the constant hum of what's next. I thought being busy meant being alive. But one morning, I woke up and couldn't remember the last time I truly listened, not to others, but to myself. So I slowed down. I started walking instead of rushing. I made coffee without checking my phone. I sat by the window and watched the light change across the room. At first, the quiet felt strange, almost uncomfortable. But then, something gentle began to surface. The sound of my own thoughts, my own heartbeat, the quiet truth I'd been too busy to hear. In slowing down, I began to listen again, to what mattered, to what I needed, to what peace actually felt like. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. The bills, the worries, the noise, they're all still there. But beneath it all, there's a calm voice that says, "You're here. This is enough." Sometimes the world doesn't need us to move faster. It just needs us to pause long enough to hear our heart whisper, "Slow down."
Every morning used to feel the same, a blur of coffee, news, and noise. I'd rush through the hours, crossing things off a list that never seemed to end. Then one day, I decided to slow down, just a little. I stepped outside and watered the plants on my porch. The air was cool. The leaves shimmered in the sunlight, and for the first time in a while, I felt present. That small act, so ordinary, so simple, felt like a quiet conversation with life itself. Since then, I've tried to do one meaningful thing each day. Sometimes it's calling an old friend, other times it's sitting in silence with a cup of tea, watching the world breathe. It doesn't have to be big or productive or impressive. It just has to be real. We spend so much of our lives chasing what's next that we forget what's here. The gentle living moments that remind us who we are. So do one thing today that matters to your heart, no matter how small. Because peace isn't found in doing more. It's found in doing what means something. And maybe that's where a more meaningful life begins.
For years, I tried to live the life I thought I was supposed to have. The bigger house, the fuller schedule, the endless list of goals that were meant to prove I'd made it. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like a stranger in my own story. My days were packed, yet my heart felt empty. One Sunday morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sunlight spilling across the floor, and I asked myself a question I'd never dared to before. Who am I really doing all this for? That moment of honesty changed everything. I began to let go, not all at once, but piece by piece. I stopped saying yes to things that drained me. I stopped chasing what didn't feel true. And with every release, life grew lighter, quieter, more mine. The funny thing is, when you stop living for others' expectations, space opens up for what really matters. Peace, clarity, joy in the simplest moments. Busyness doesn't mean purpose. Sometimes it's just noise. When we let go of what doesn't align, we find something far more powerful than success. We find ourselves, and that's where real freedom begins.
There was a time when my mind was always 2 steps ahead, planning, fixing, reaching.
even on quiet mornings, I'd sip my coffee while thinking about the next thing on the list. The world teaches us to keep moving, to stay productive, as if stillness were something to be ashamed of. But one day, life slowed me down. I was sitting on the back porch, the air cool, a soft breeze moving through the trees. For the first time in a long while, I noticed how the sunlight touched the leaves, how the earth smelled after rain. And in that stillness, something inside me softened. It became clear that true purpose isn't waiting in the next goal or milestone. It's right here, in the moment we're living. It's in the breath before we speak, the pause before we decide, the kindness we show without needing a reason. When we're fully where our feet are, life opens up in quiet, unexpected ways. The noise fades, and what's left is simple and true. Maybe we don't need to chase meaning anymore. Maybe all we need is to stop, look around, and realize we're already standing in the middle of it.
I used to spend hours just scrolling through news, through pictures, through other people's lives. It was easy, effortless, and oddly empty. One day, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I made something with my own hands. So I went outside and planted a few herbs in an old pot by the porch. Nothing fancy, just soil, seeds, and sunlight. But watching those tiny green shoots push through the dirt stirred something inside me. It reminded me how good it feels to create instead of just consume. Since then, I've started making more. Not for anyone else, not for perfection, just for peace. I bake bread on Sunday mornings, write a few lines in a worn notebook, sometimes paint, even when it turns out messy. There's something sacred in the act of creating. It slows the mind, softens the heart, and reminds you that beauty isn't bought. It's built, slowly, with love. We live in a world that tells us to take in more, but maybe what our souls crave is to give something back, a small piece of ourselves shaped by care and intention. Because every time we create, we plant a little piece back into the world and into our own hearts.
There was a time when I believed that to live with purpose, I had to change everything. I used to daydream about packing my bags, leaving the noise behind, and starting over somewhere quiet, maybe a little cabin in the mountains or a cottage by the sea, somewhere far away from the endless emails, the schedules, the expectations. I thought peace was something that only existed on the other side of escape. But life, as it often does, taught me differently. One morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The house was still, the world outside soft and gray with dawn. I made a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching the steam rise and fade. For once, I wasn't thinking about the day ahead, the errands, the bills, the calls. I was just there. In that quiet, I realized that purpose wasn't hiding somewhere far away. It was right there, in the smallest, most ordinary moments. You don't need to move to the mountains to find meaning. You don't need to quit your job, sell everything you own, or start some grand new adventure. Purpose isn't found in the dramatic changes. It's built quietly in the choices we make each day. When you choose to sit with someone who needs company instead of scrolling through your phone, that's purpose. When you choose to listen, really listen, without waiting for your turn to speak, that's purpose too.
When you take a moment to breathe before reacting, when you say, "I love you" before hanging up the phone, when you water the plants, feed the cat, or watch the sunset without needing to post it, that's purpose too. We've been told for so long that meaning must be something big, a dream, a title, a legacy. But maybe real meaning is made in the small, steady moments that ask for our full presence and our heart. I think about my neighbor, an older man named Henry. Every morning, without fail, he sweeps his porch and waves at everyone who passes by. He doesn't say much, but his smile feels like sunlight on a cold day. One morning, I asked him how he stays so calm, so steady. He chuckled and said, "I just wake up and decide what matters most, and I try to do that." Maybe that's it. Maybe living with purpose isn't about doing more, but choosing better. Choosing to fill your life with what truly matters: love, peace, and connection. The rest can wait. We spend so much time chasing what's next that we forget what's here: the coffee cooling beside us, the laughter from someone we love, the quiet rhythm of our own breath. All reminders that life doesn't have to be loud to be meaningful. Sometimes the most profound thing we can do is to notice. These days, I don't dream about escaping anymore. I still have bills, still answer emails, still get caught in the noise of the world. But I also take moments, small, deliberate pauses, to return to what matters, to smile at a stranger, to step outside and feel the air, to say thank you for one more morning. Because purpose isn't somewhere out there waiting to be discovered. It's something we create right here in the quiet spaces between everything else. And the beautiful thing is, we get to choose it every single day.